But for me to share that with people who I don't know, all over, and I'm not, again, not talking about you, I'm talking about people all over the internet. I remember thinking, should I do this? Should I put myself out there? And now, again, we're 72 episodes in. This isn't episode 5. You can find me saying wacky stuff throughout the show. Episode 13 that I just covered earlier this week, I said if I'm trapped on an island with you for 3 weeks, we might hook up. So I was saying wacky stuff. But this was personal to me. This was personal to me. This was saying this is a belief that I have that is not accepted by the mainstream. I also gotta say this. I'm gonna go deeper into hypersigils real quick, but I also gotta say this. There are very few episodes where I cuss on, and I totally forget that I do it, and it always catches me off guard when I'm listening to it. In the episode we did yesterday about the Great Mud Flood, about was the world destroyed in the 1860s, I cussed in that. Totally caught me off guard. This episode I cussed as well. It's super weird. I cuss a lot in real life. It's just the way I communicate. But I don't do it on the show. I don't think it works on the show. I used to cuss there's one episode where I did this bit about a coach throwing chairs around a basketball stadium or something like that, and I used the F word a couple times, and it's so cringy. I'm really debating just taking it out. It adds nothing to the episode. It totally catches you off guard. This episode I didn't do that. This episode I just, used the S word. Just funny for me to say it like that because I cuss all the time in real life, but it's just, it's the Yuba County 5. It's a great episode. It's one of my personal favorite episodes. There's this bit in the middle of it about this hardcore basketball coach who's like throwing chairs. It's like these Special Olympians, and this guy is like a high-level NBA coach who comes out to coach special. It's just dumb. It's so dumb. And I cuss for like 2 minutes straight, and it's not funny. It's so funny because I just listened to this episode the other day, and I don't even remember the context of when I said that word. I just remember listening to it, and I was like, what? But I'm not going to go in and edit that one, but I most likely will edit out the Yuba County 5. So download that one soon, because that's the neat thing about podcasts. You can actually go back and I've done that before. I've taken out copyrighted material. You can edit stuff out, and then you put it back up. But it's just such a cringy joke. And the joke's not at the expense of the Special Olympian. It's at the expense of why would you have a high-level NBA? It doesn't work. Why was I even making that joke? Have a high-level NBA? Because it was a weird thing. They were making these Special Olympians compete for the ultimate prize. And I was like, just give them a trip to Disneyland. Why are you making them compete? Why is there only one group of kids? They weren't even kids. They were adults. Why does only one group of adults get to go to Disneyland? I don't know why I'm talking about that episode during this episode. But yeah, super cringy. And I don't like cussing on the show. I used to do it if it fit the story, and now I just don't do it at all. But anyways, let's talk about hypersigil. After I diverged, after I did a background on another episode, let's talk about Dead Rabbit not that. Let's talk about hypersigils for the rest of this. This is so important for you guys to do, and for me to do, for us to do. You have to visualize your success. When I was doing this episode 72 to episode 630, wherever we're at now, 640, 50, by the time you guys are listening to these repeats, I have now had enough time, 2 years, to see a difference between when I visualize and when I do not. It is night and day. You have to do this to be successful. I 100% believe that. I believe people who are successful and don't do this but don't know it. I think people who have successful businesses or successful careers or whatever they're trying to do and they're successful, they're actually visualizing and they do not know it. Just like how I have double vision and I thought everyone in the world saw like me until someone pointed out that I had double vision. Someone who is successful uses the power of visualization, is using the power of hypersigils, and doesn't know it. So they're drawing glyphs on the wall, and everyone's like, hey, Tommy, why are you drawing that glyph? I don't know. They're using these creative powers. They're manipulating the universe. They're sending out what they want into the universe. They're getting it back. Now, some people have to really concentrate on it. Some people have never done it, see? And they have to read books on it, and they have to listen to podcasts on it, and they have to figure out how to do it. And other people, it just happens for them. When you listen to, like, Tupac in interview, you listen to almost any musician in interview who is successful, they'll say, I dreamt about this my entire life. Like, I used to go to bed every night. Biggie Smalls, Tupac. I used to go to bed every night. And I visualized myself. I dreamt that I was going to be famous. And we hear that and we go, oh yeah, you know, I ever so often I'll daydream about. No, it's not that. It's not that. I think it would be hard pressed to find a musician who picked up a guitar one day and became famous. Now, I'm not saying every musician is super good and they didn't just pick up a guitar, but these are people who, I bet you anything, if you talk to them, they're like, yeah, you know, it's super weird. Ever since I was a kid, I knew I was going to be famous. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And then one day I picked up a guitar, and I happened to meet my buddy was in a band, and we're playing around, and the next thing I know, Maroon 5's the #1 band in America. You got to work hard, though. You got to work hard. You just can't visualize. I was listening to an Eminem song the other day, and one of the lines was, I don't remember it verbatim, I think it was Say What You Say. It's one of his older songs, but I think one of the lines was like, I was imagining this since I was a kid. I knew since I was a kid I was going to blow up. Now, do I think he sat there and focused on his intent, putting it out into the formless universe to give him fame? Probably not. If I said that to him, he'd be like, what are you talking about? So, now you have time to talk, Mr. Mathers. He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Dead Rabbit Radio. Because that's my name. That's my name now. No, I'm sure if you asked him about it, he'd be like, what are you talking about? But then if you go, well, did you visualize it? Like, since you were a kid? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, no, I knew since I was a kid I was going to be famous. Like, I just could feel it. And I would daydream and I'd write in my book about, oh, yeah, I know what it was like to feel the stage lights on my skin and the roar of the crowd. Not the cloud, which is what I almost said. Walking on stage and hearing the cheap wood of that first stage at that club creak underneath your feet. You perform your song and then you walk off. You go to that grimy little green room in the back, and while you're sitting back there, that was the first step. You just imagined going into that first club. But while you're in that club in real life, you're imagining the next club, the bigger venue, signing the contracts, meeting Dr. Dre, meeting Dead Rabbit Radio. You meet some of your security guards. You visualize that too. You have to visualize this. And I see a difference. I 100% see a difference in the show when I visualize the show growing. I visualize people going through their phone and finding my podcast. I visualize people sitting there and someone going, hey, what are you listening to? And the other person goes, oh, I'm listening to this hilarious podcast. It's called Dead Rabbit Radio. What? I visualize all of these interactions happening, and they happen because I can look at an objective set of numbers and see them go up. And when I stop doing that, the growth stagnates 100%. Now, you could go, Jason, that's just correlation. It's just correlation. Maybe. That's the most logical answer. But I feel that it's right. And when I say I visualize it, I'm not saying I sit there between YouTube videos loading up where I just kind of go, oh, wouldn't it be nice if... No, I will spend time before bed focusing on it. I will spend time walking down the street focusing on it. Focusing on it. And that's what you need to do. That's the missing component with so much success. And maybe you don't want to be famous. That's admirable. Too many people want to be famous. I want my show to get out there. I think that this show helps people. I think at the very least it keeps them entertained while they're doing the dishes or washing the car, at the very least. And then I've gotten a lot of emails from people who this show has helped them through the pandemic. It's helped them not feel so lonely whether or not there's a pandemic going on. It's helped them with substance abuse issues. When I'm not telling super cringy jokes about stupid coaches throwing chairs and cussing is so bad. I'm going to visualize me editing that episode soon. You have to visualize it, though. It's interesting, I'm rereading, actually in preparation of this episode, Marcus Clausen recommended this the first time I asked Patreons for recommendations, which was a while ago. Then he re-recommended it. So I actually started rereading the book, The Science of Getting Rich, which I had never given any credence to visualization. The only time I talked about visualization is if you talk to any bodybuilder, they will say, I visualized my body to be this big. If you talk to bodybuilders, which again is a very objective thing, you can either lift those weights or you can't. You could go, hey man, I tried my best to be famous, but I couldn't get the right agent, and I moved to Hollywood, and da-da-da. Weightlifting, you lift the weights, you get stronger. You lift heavier weights, you get even stronger. Talk to any bodybuilder, they go, I visualize. I visualize. You look through any fitness book, they always talk about visualization. So I followed that when I was weightlifting back in college. And I noticed that it worked, but I was like, oh, well, it's just encouraging me to lift more weights. It's not, It wasn't until decades later I found this book online called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. And it changed the way I looked at visualization. I honestly think the podcast wouldn't exist without that book. And if it did exist, I don't think it would have really taken off. I think I needed to use the power of visualization. Honestly. But there's an interesting thing, and it's you have to be grateful for something you don't have yet. You have to believe you already have it, and you have to be grateful to the universe for giving you something that you don't have. So a lot of it is mental manipulation. A lot of it is to go, I am so thankful that I have this amazing recording studio, this hardwood desk, and this powerful editing computer. Now I can start doing not now that I can start. For the past couple weeks, I've been doing video editing, been posting those videos on YouTube. That's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I'm so thankful that the universe has been able to provide me with the assets to set up this virtual recording suite. I have an interview scheduled next week with Slimer, with a ghost, with an actual ghost. Can you believe it? Thank you, universe. Thank you for giving me the tools that I needed, that I already had. Thank you. You have to live in that mind state. And the universe basically goes, oh, yeah, he already has that stuff. And then that stuff is provided to me. It's weird. It's absolutely weird, and it sounds totally foolish. But I believe it. I believe it can work. Now, obviously, there's a lot of wiggle room in that, because you could go, what about, and this is the thing I always go back to, some kid in a war-torn country. He doesn't want to be in the war-torn country. Is it his problem he's in the war-torn country because he can't imagine himself not in a war-torn country? No, absolutely not. That poor child, right, is a victim of that circumstance. And it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't work for everyone, but there are situations, obviously, like that, where you can't just be like, think of a better life, son. But I believe that it works. I've seen evidence of it in the process of this show. I already believe I have so many listeners. And I watch my listeners grow. And when I stop doing that mental exercise, the show stagnates. Correlation, obviously, anyone who believes in any sort of faith will go, oh, no, I prayed and then this happened. And anyone who doesn't believe in that faith goes, well, I don't believe in your faith, so that was just coincidence. But try it. Buy that book. It's. I shouldn't say it is free. You can find free copies online. It's published back in the late 1800s. But The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. Take a look at it. See if you can forge your own hypersigil. See if you can tell your own story and change reality. All it takes is mental power and work. You have to have the work too. I just can't sit here and dream up, want to have the best podcast ever and never record anything, or record an episode once a month or anything like that. But if you're willing to put in the work, and if you're willing to put in the mental work, which is actually, I've not stopped doing this show other than taking the breaks, but I've stopped using the mental power to move the show forward, because it actually takes more mental power to look around and see a different reality than you're in. I never stopped doing the show, but I've stopped doing those mental exercises. It does take a powerful brain to do that, but I believe that I can train my brain to do that. I believe you can train your brain to do that. And I think it's worth trying to do that.